Trigger warning, this post has extreme misogynoir. So that's misogyny directed specifically at Black women. This was posted in the Black Ladies subreddit. She says, my former, that word is important, my former Black male friend claims to be pro-Black woman, but then goes off on a rant after he asked me about dating preferences. Okay, here's the caption at the bottom saying, my ex-friend decided to ask me if he thinks I can marry a man with money. I said, yeah, I possibly could. I was confused because it came out of nowhere. He proceeded to go on to verbally attack me and quote Kevin Samuels despite claiming to be pro-Black women. After this interaction, I don't think I'll ever have a male friend again unless he's gay. Another trigger warning. This was 18 sets of screenshots. That is a lot. That's a lot of dialogue in general. So I'm going to read some of this because I think it's important to see how some of these people can escalate and what's in their brains. But if you want to just let the video play so I get credit, that's perfectly fine. But I am going to skip some of the slides because this is just way too much. So I'm going to call this dude Dusty because I imagine that that's his name. So Dusty says, do you really think you could pull a rich dude? What qualities do you have that a rich dude would want? She says, yes, or yeah, I think I possibly could. Why? He says, I mean, watch Kevin Samuels. Like, what qualities do you possess for a rich man? So that is a red flag right here saying, watch Kevin Samuels. That is a perfectly reasonable place to block a man. She kept going, obviously. She says, I'm well educated, grew up around money, ambitious. He says, I mean, rich men don't care about that. They want you to look pretty and take care of the kids. And she says, depends on the man. Growing up around some of it, depends. And he says, I don't know, like rich men care about beauty and they have tons of options. He really knows what rich men wants, probably because he's into rich men, I think. She says it got cut off, but it says if he's controlling and vapid like that, then yeah, he will want someone like that. He says, what makes you want to stand out? She says, are you trying to say I'm not attractive? He says, what makes you stand out is what I'm saying. She says, I look nice when I clean up. People tell me they love my style, my smile. He says, bro, that's not enough for a rich man. You competing with Instagram models. Like, you not an Instagram model. She says, not all men want Instagram models because they look obviously fake. He says, I mean, she says, why does it bother you that I now have higher standards? He says, those aren't higher standards. A Black man with an education should be the bare minimum. So now he's telling her what her standards should be. I want someone who has their together financially and is educated. I don't think that's too much to ask. He says, I mean, that's one thing, but you're asking for the top 1% of man. She didn't say that. She says, doesn't necessarily have to be the top 1%. Top 5% is good. He says, you said rich, laughing my butt off. To be honest, what is even the top 5%? She says, almost $500,000 a year. That seems reasonable to me. 500,000, that seems good. She says, as a doctor, that's what I'll be making. So I want someone in a similar bracket. Nothing wrong with that. He says, out of medical school, you really think you'll be making 500K? Well, Google does say yes. So she says, not straight out, but after residency as a radiologist, yeah, I can make close to that in the first year. He says, yeah, you're right. So he is understanding that, yeah, she's going to be making some money. He says, I mean, good luck to you. She says, are you upset? He says, nobody is upset. I just don't want you to be like these delusional Black women. She says, I'm not. I'm building my own wealth. I already have my own stuff. I just want someone who is the same. I'm not the stay-at-home, getting Botox and nails done IG model type. And he says, I would hope not. She says, I want to build several businesses and it would be great to have a husband that will want to be with me while I do it. He says, yeah, I gotcha. She says, he doesn't have to be rich off the bat. He has to be educated and ambitious. The fact that she's still like defending her position is wild to me. We're on slide 4. She says, your reaction feels strange. He says, how? She says, just telling me I don't have the qualities for my standards feels sort of mean. He says, I'm being honest. Would you rather have Kevin Samuels tell you if he was alive? He'd fire you into oblivion. I'm being nice about it. Now, keep in mind, he's the one that asked her what her standards were, and now he is berating her for having these standards. This is wild to me. She says, I just feel like you're calling me ugly. And Kevin Samuels was problematic, by the way. He says, I mean, you said you wanted to raise your standards, then you flat out said you wanted a rich ninja. She says, I guess I should say financially successful, like someone who would be making around the same as me. Do you expect me to date a broke man who plays video games all day? I did skip one slide. All right, she says, I just told you how you hurt my feelings, and instead of apologizing, you double down on what you said. Just makes me feel like I'm being a good friend to someone who won't be a good friend back. He says, I'm being a good friend by being honest with you. You don't qualify for a rich man. You can get an upper middle class man. And then she says, and you don't qualify for a sane woman. And he's like, laughing my butt off. Bro, none of the women in my life are sane. Just calm down. She says, you're making me cry. Please don't give these men don't give them this ammunition. Don't let them see that you're bothered. Don't do this. She says, no, you're making me cry. Don't say that to these men. Don't cry in front of them. Don't show that you're being bothered by them. Be unbothered. All right, let's continue though. She says, and you refuse to apologize. He says, stop crying. She says, you're effing pissing me off and you don't even care after everything I've done for you. Okay, I skipped one slide, and he says in all caps, you aren't qualified in the looks department for it. You want me to lie to you. You know damn well I go hard for black women. And she says, that's very effing rude. I'm so disappointed in you. He says, it's not rude. I'm being honest. And she says, I don't know why me moving on is such a problem for you. He says, ninja, what the F are you talking about? Sigh, go calm down. She says, do you think me wanting someone who is financially successful bothers you because you aren't yourself, so you see it as an attack? He says, what are you talking about? She says, you keep hyper fixating on that part. And that part isn't even what's most important. I skipped a few slides. We're on 14 now. She says, that's why you're alone, because you drive people away being a butthole. He says, ninja, that's not why I'm alone. I'm alone because I want to be alone. She says, then why do you complain about being lonely? He says, because I am lonely, but I know I got trust issues and I don't want to project them onto someone else. I'm being considerate. She says, it just changes the way I look at you. He says, why? He says, y'all be honest with men and call them bums. Why can't I be honest with women? She says, no, but they don't see me as just for sex. You're not being honest. You're upset you can't live up to many women's expectations, so you take it out on them. He says, what the F are you even talking about? I'm being honest. I can get any woman I want. You're the one that's the ugly duckling. She says, why are you talking to me like that? He starts a fight, and then he just uses this as a reason to insult her. A piece from Dusty is cut off at the top. He says, bro, I call my friends ugly all the time. And she says, that's why you don't have many. He says, bro, I have a good number of friends. Keep in mind, this is a woman he's talking to. She says, you can't treat people like that. Bro, I don't treat you bad. I'm being honest. I asked you. And she says, you didn't until now. That's what's perplexing to me. He says, what sets you apart from other women that a high value man would want you for? And she says, if someone says what you said hurts their feelings, you apologize. That's the decent thing to do. He says, ninja. And she says, you wouldn't know blank because you're not from that environment. He calls her the B word. He says, I went to blank on a full academic scholarship. So now he's getting a little testy with her about his qualifications. He's getting really mad here. He says, who the F you're ugly, fresh off the boat butt talking to? My parents make 3 times the money you make. He doesn't say he's making 3 times the money she makes. She says, fresh off the boat? He says, ninja, don't get smart with me. I'll have you cry all night. I asked you. She says, I was born here. You don't know anything about my family's financial situation. You think because I'm blank, I'm beneath you. Finally, the last slide. He says, who your ugly butt talking to like that? She says, you. He says, you come from nothing. You aren't. She says, you're a piece of He says, you're ugly. You're literally uglier than the bottom of an Adidas basketball shoe, and you can't get a high value man. You're too ugly for it. She says, and no one wants you. He says, no one wants you. You chase after a bum ninja for years, ugly B word, bald head B word. And she says, you call blank a B word, and that's why she didn't want you. So that was long, and I do realize that I took the time and read several of those slides. But did you see how he escalated this conversation? He started the conversation and then he escalated it because he really wanted to bring this woman down 3 to 7 notches for whatever reason, because she had the nerve to have some standards to want somebody who's going to live the same type of life that she wants to live. Now, I'm only going to do one long comment from this post because that was already long. But Lurking Mostly Only Yes says, sorry, not attacking OP, but can we stop doing this as Black girls and women? I keep seeing stories like this. I think as a demographic, we need to practice just blocking people automatically. I've started doing that in my life, as well as up and leaving when I feel uncomfortable, and my life has legitimately gotten so much better. The second this weirdo mentioned Kevin Samuels, you should have smashed that block button. Like, it's not being mean or black and white thinking. Why is he watching and referencing a man who was outright hostile to your demographic? Please take microaggressions like that seriously. Men watched his BS, then logged off and beat their wives. Men like him are violent and aggressive, and you shouldn't have entertained him once he told you who he was. Again, not trying to victim blame you, OP, because I used to be like this when I was younger until I learned some hard lessons. Now I Chung Lee kick hostile people out of my life, and this year has been the greatest year I've ever lived. Please take that to heart. Block people and Chun Li kick them out of your life. I like that. That is what we're doing. We're practicing self-care. Block, and block quicker, y'all.